Well, by way of a very quick introduction, so that we can get anybody watching this straight into the juicy, interesting stuff, I'm Harrison, half of Reboot. I'm an artist who now writes. I spend most of my time now traveling with my wife and obsessing over the creative process and working with people one-to-one and in small groups to help them be more creative and feel better about their work. And part of my work is working with you, John, on developing Reboot, which we've currently framed as like alternative business education for adults, but actually it's much more art school than business school. And the people that we want working with us can have a project in mind that makes money or not. It doesn't have to. I think the most important thing for us, right, is that we want people to just enjoy building something or working on something for its own sake.
Hi, I'm John. I'm the other half of Reboot. Reboot's my third startup. Really enjoying working with Harrison in partnership to build this together.
We wanted to record this short lightning lesson to give people the types of things that we talk about and that we're interested in. One of the things that me and John talk about often that we're very excited about actually is this idea of what some people online have called the 5 salaries or the 5 incomes of a job. Now we've tried to find a source for this, but we can't. So it seems as if it's one of these ideas that just exists in the collective consciousness out there online somewhere. But it's the idea that every job, beyond just the financial salary of things that, obvious things like wages and equity, has actually 4 other very, very important salaries that people don't often think about or talk about. And so we thought that it'd make for a nice lightning lesson just to spend a couple of minutes thinking through those and thinking about the implications of them, I suppose, for you if you're either thinking about making a job transition or you just have, or even just if you want to understand why you thrived in certain jobs in the past and not in others.
Harrison, and just one other thing I notice on financial salaries, sometimes people get into what they experience as a random series of role plays, Monday to Friday, and then they use the credit card on the weekend to try and achieve happiness. And we want to help people sort of break out of that if you're anywhere close to that. The second salary, the social salary, is, who are we spending time with? Jim Rohn, one of the sort of godfathers of personal growth, said we are the average of the 5 people we spend most of our time with. And I think it's worth reflecting on that. Who are we spending time with, and how does that pay off for us? How does that work for us? And one of the things Harrison and I were thinking about this lightning lesson is you might think where you are now with each of these salaries and where you could be.
When you said the 5 people you hang out with most, 2 things. One was like, I thought, well, you're one of them. So that this idea that you're the average of the 5 people you're hanging out with, it's like you are included in that 5, I suppose, maybe, which goes into talking about how you treat yourself or how you regard yourself, I suppose. But that's maybe a conversation for another day. But secondly, it made me think, who are we following online, right? Like, if you spend most of your time just scrolling Instagram endlessly, and by the way, I heard that on average we scroll the height of the Eiffel Tower every day on Instagram. Does it mean that you're the average of the 5 biggest Instagram or Twitter accounts that you're consuming on a daily basis? So really important to think about the social salary of your job existing both online and off. Couple of final points on the social salary. Does the job or does the line of work have a lot of opportunity for IRL interactions? That could also be online or off, but are you getting the opportunity to meet with people a little bit like this, face to face, and actually go deep and get beyond, some of the more superficial conversations that you might have in larger groups or in more casual situations? The third type of salary of any job is the educational salary, of course. How much of an opportunity do you have to continue learning? Are you on a steep learning curve, or are you on one that's like more or less flatlined? And if it is flatlining, what opportunities are there within the job or outside of it to sort of change that? Also, like, it's not just about learning new knowledge and new tools. It's also about teaching. Does your job or your vocation or whatever it is you're working on give you the opportunity to actually turn the tables and try to teach people things? Because as lots of wise people have told us, one of the best ways to learn is actually to try to teach people, because it shows you where your own gaps are.
And on the educational salary, Harrison, it's interesting how social and educational come together. One of the things Seth Godin often says is find the others. So one of the things we found on Reboot is the people that we've been interacting with have started teaching each other. This idea of cohort-based learning is very powerful. And we want to put the idea of choose your adventure as part of Reboot. And now we've all escaped the formal educational system. We can start learning on our own terms. We can build our own syllabus. We can follow our curiosity. And that is incredibly powerful, turbocharged by AI. And it's a discovery process. And the salary next after educational is psychological. Again, these things are interconnected, but the psychological salary, I would say, one way into that is to think about values, what's important to you, and does whatever you're doing for work, for anything else, does it meet those values? Are you going with the flow of your values? Or are you somehow trying to swim upstream? That can be very powerful. Are you making an impact in the world? Are you feeling you get some internal recognition, maybe even external validation for the effort that you put in to the things that you're engaged with? Are you learning? Are you growing as a human being? Is the personal growth there? And are you looking after yourself? Are you feeling resilient, which is the word at the moment, capable to stay in the game for the long haul? So that's psychological. Anything you'd add to that, Harrison?
No, they're all good points. I think this is one of those salaries that can feel like many of the others fit into it or feed into it, actually. Because if you've got if you've got a great financial salary, a great social and a great educational salary, that's usually an indication that the psychological salary is going to be quite healthy as well for your job or your project. But it is an individual one to think about. And one thing that came up while you were talking was, is what you're doing secure in the long term? That might be, one way of thinking about security in the long term is around job security, or having a diverse range of projects if you've got more of a portfolio career. But it might also mean like security in terms of sustainability. So if something's really personally meaningful to you, you're more likely to have juicy ideas that you want to capitalize on more often. Then you're more likely to show up and get up out of bed to continue on the project, even when you have those inevitable dips that tend to happen in the middle of a creative project. So we've gone from financial and social to educational and psychological. The final salary is the freedom salary. So this is one of my favorites. Are you able to work remotely, either partially or in full? Can you work from anywhere? Are you able to be your own boss? Do you feel that you have personal and creative autonomy over what you're doing? And also a good point that my friend mentioned on the freedom salary was, do you actually have time left over to do other things? And that's an interesting question, because it may be that, and it's probably quite likely actually, that we can't all have the perfect job and get paid for doing what we love exclusively, right? We're going to have to, sometimes we're going to have to work with that client who we don't necessarily want to work with. Sometimes we're going to have a job that's maybe not ideal. But can we protect some time of our own to work on passion projects and things that just interest us because they make life worth living, rather than being so obsessed about making a living?
I'm reminded of the American poet Mary Oliver, who said, tell me, what is it you want to do with this one wild and precious life you've been given? And on Reboot, we really want all of us to sort of wake up to that question, to explore that question together. There's so much possibility in this world, and yet it's very possible, being there myself, to get narrowed, to get, somehow it feels hard to fully bring your best ideas forward in some situations. We want to break through all of that on Reboot. Now, with this lightning lesson, Harrison and I are really keen that whether or not you sign for Reboot, you get something from it. So you may want to get a piece of paper, put it landscape. On the left-hand side, put these 5 salaries down: financial, social, educational, psychological, freedom. You can either do a pie chart, or you can do a scale of 0 to 100. Where do you stack up? Where do you rate yourself on this? And on the right-hand side, where would you like to be? What would be optimal, realistic over, say, the next year for you to make that shift? And we hope that you find that useful. If you do find that you're interested in learning more, Harrison and I are very happy to speak to you to find out if Reboot is the right program for you at this time. We'd be very happy, very, very pleased to do that. And this is an example of how we would work. participatively, introducing something, making sense of it together, helping you choose your adventure. Now, when we've worked with Reboot before, we found that choosing a project, a creative project for yourself, no one else putting parameters on it, no one else putting quality criteria, deadlines, budgets, just you. And using that creative venture, which we're intentionally leaving very open, for you to bring to prototype how you'd like to be in the world and what you'd like to do. Now, that might be anything from an artistic discovery process to something that could grow into some kind of business. We don't have any value judgment on whatever the heck you want to bring to Reboot. Anything and everything is welcome.